Hi students, today's session is on active voice and passive voice. As you can see here, active voice basically focuses on the subject or the agent. Passive voice focuses on object, which is usually the receiver of action. Let's find out the meaning of active voice and passive voice. The word active itself indicates that the agent or the subject does the action or performs the action, whereas in passive, the subject receives the action. Let's have a look at these two sentences here. Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. Let's dissect the sentence. Who is the performer in the sentence? Or who is the subject? Who does the action here? Shakespeare, right? And the verb in the sentence is wrote and the object is Hamlet. Since the subject is active here, we can say that the sentence is in active voice. Let's look at the next sentence. Hamlet was written by Shakespeare. Here, Hamlet has become the subject and Shakespeare has moved to the position of object. But here, though Hamlet is the subject, it is the receiver of the action done by Shakespeare. Let's learn about passive voice first. Passive voice is used when the action is the focus, not the performer or the subject. Let's have a look at these two examples here. The window is broken. The sentence here is in passive voice because the focus is on the action, not on the subject. It is not known who broke the window, or it is not important to know who broke the window. That's how the focus is on the action, not the subject. Let's look at the second example. The class has been cancelled. Again, the focus is on the class here being cancelled. It's not important to know who cancelled it. That's how the subject has not been in the focus in both the sentences because the importance has been given to the action. After learning about passive voice, it is also important for you to know when to use passive voice. Passive voice should be avoided when you want more clarity or lucidity in writing, right? However, in some cases, you need to use passive voice to stress the action, not the doer or the subject. Also, passive voice can be considered more polite as it sounds less aggressive or dramatic. Most of the newspapers make use of passive voice because their focus is on events or situations rather than the subject. We also need to know some fundamental rules when we want to change a sentence from active voice to passive voice. The places of subject and object in sentence are interchanged in passive voice. Second rule, very important, in fact I can say the cornerstone of passive voice, only third form of the verb, if I have to use a grammatical word, past participle will be used as main verb in passive voice. Right? When I say only third form of the verb, it means only third form of the verb is always used in passive voice and no other verb is used. Let's have a look at these two examples here. That building was built in 1990 by XYZ. Here the focus is more on the object rather than the subject. And if you have noticed, 3V has been used in this sentence. Build is 1V, build is 2V, again built is also the 3V, right? Let's look at the next sentence. The car was invented about 100 years ago. Same here, the focus is on the event or the incident or the object, not on the subject. So it is the car. Invent is 1V, invented is 2V, and again invented is 3V. So in both the sentences we have used what is called 3V form of the verb or past participle. Since the focus is on the object in both the sentences are in passive voice. Now let's look at changing of sentence from AV to PV in simple present. Means we are changing a sentence from active voice to passive voice using the tense simple present. The formula has been given here in the sense what are the auxiliary verbs or helping verbs that are used in passive voice. Right. Let's look at the first one here. In active voice, he sings a song. The subject is he, or the performer of the action is he, or the agent is he, and the verb is sings, and the object is a song. As we learned earlier in the fundamental rules that interchange takes place in passive voice, a song which is an object here becomes the subject in passive voice. Mind you students, tenses will not change even in passive voice. Tenses remain the same even in passive voice. There is only the interchange of the subject and the object. Right. In the first sentence, he sings a song which is in simple present, right? Even in passive voice, the same sentence remains in simple present. The only change is sings, which is in 1V, gets changed to 3V. That's how it becomes sung. The two important indicators that the sentence is in passive voice. What are these two? First one is 3V of a verb, and usually the agent is used along with the preposition by. Right? Right. He sings a song gets changed to a song is sung. Is, the helping verb, which has to be used with a song is. And the 3V of sings is sung. He gets changed to him. And the preposition is by. Let's look at the second sentence. He does not sing a song. Again, interchange takes place. That's how the object becomes subject and passive. A song is not sung by him. Same here, he gets changed to him. Let's look at the last one here. Does he sing a song? Yes. Now when we change it, does gets replaced with is. Right? Is a song sung by him. Now when we look at the passive voice, all the three sentences have one common feature, that is 3V is used in all the three sentences and the preposition by is also quite noticeable. So these two are the indicators of passive voice. Let's move on to how to change a sentence from AV to PV when the sentence is in simple past. Right. The auxiliary verbs basically get changed. Instead of is, am, are, which we used in simple present, they get changed to was, were, because we are dealing with simple past here. But the 3V remains same here also, because passive voice means 3V. Right, let's look at the first one here. I killed a snake. Right, this is in past tense. And the sentence is in active voice because the subject is active, or the performer is active because he is doing some action here. Right. Let's dissect the sentence. I is the subject, killed is the verb, a snake is the object. Let's make the interchange. That's how a snake, which is an object, becomes the subject in passive verbs. So a snake was killed by, I becomes me. Because I is placed in the object position, that's how I becomes me. Right. Was is used here because a snake is singular and in past tense it is was. Let's look at the next sentence. I did not kill a snake. Same here, the object takes the position of subject in passive, that's how a snake takes the subject position. A snake, since it is singular, we have to use was. A snake was not. 3V of kill is kill is 1V, killed is 2V, and killed again is 3V. A snake was not killed by, I becomes me. Let's look at the last one here. Did I kill a snake? Right. Now this gets changed to, was a snake killed by me? Did gets replaced with was. The 3V form of kill is killed. I gets changed to me. So the important point you all need to remember here is, in simple past, the auxiliary verbs that are used are, if it is singular, was, and if it is plural, were, and 3V remains in passive. Let's move on to simple future tense and how it gets changed into passive. Right. Again, the auxiliary verb that is used in passive in simple future tenses will be, let's look at the sentences here. First one, she will buy a car. This is a simple future tense in active voice. Why active? Because the subject is active and she is the subject here. The object is a car. Let's change it to passive. The object becomes the subject. That's how a car has taken the subject position in passive. And the auxiliary verb or the helping verb that gets used in passive voice in simple future is will be. The 3V form of buy is buy, bought, bought. She gets changed to her. Let's look at the next sentence. She will not buy a car. Again, the subject is active and it is she here. The object is a car. Now the interchange takes place in passive voice. A car becomes the subject in passive voice, right? And the helping verb will be only. A car will not be, 3V form of buy is bought, and she becomes her. Let's look at the last one here. Will she buy a car? Right? Will remain as will in the question form, even in passive, right? Will a car, and the helping verb that gets used here is will a car be bought by her? The 3V form of buy is buy, bought, and bought. Let's move on to how to change present continuous tense from active voice to passive voice. When you're dealing with present continuous tense and passive voice, the helping verbs that get used in passive voice are am being, or is being, or are being, depending on what we have in the place of subject in passive voice. If you have a singular subject in passive voice, we have to use is being, right? And if I have something like a plural, then I may have to go with are being. Right, let's look at some of the examples here. I am writing a letter is in present continuous and the sentence is in active voice because the subject is active and the subject is performing some action here. And the subject here in this sentence is I and the object here is a letter. Now let's go for interchange. That's how a letter becomes subject in passive voice. So a letter is being. I want you all to make note of this. Is being. Whenever you have continuous tenses in passive voice, ing form gets changed to being, but the 3V is mandatory in all the sentences in passive voice. That's how writing, the 3V form of writing is written. 1V is write, 2V is wrote, and 3V is written. I gets changed to me because I from subject position has shifted to object position. That's how I becomes me. Let's look at the next sentence. I am not writing a letter. Same. Object becomes subject. A letter is not being written by me. Right. When I say ing, that gets changed to being in passive. And 3V, as I said earlier, always in passive voice, irrespective of the tense that you're dealing with, 3V has to be used. I gets changed to me, as I mentioned earlier. And the last one, am I writing a letter, gets changed to is a letter being written by me. Right? So if you have ing form in active voice, then we have to use being in passive voice. Let's move on to how to change past continuous from active voice to passive voice. As I mentioned earlier, whenever you have any continuous tenses in active voice, we have to use being in passive voice. And as I mentioned earlier, 3V has to be used in all the sentences in passive voice. The only change you may notice from present continuous and past continuous in passive voice is am, are. They get replaced with was, were, because we are dealing with past. Let's look at the examples here. He was driving a car is in active voice, right? And the sentence is in past continuous. Now, same thing, the interchange takes place. That's how the object a car becomes the subject. A car was being, 3V of driving is driven by him. He gets changed to him. Okay, let's analyze the verb form here. 1V is drive, 2V is drove, and 3V is driven. Right, let's look at the next sentence. He was not driving a car. Again, the object here is a car, gets changed to subject's position, and that's how a car was not being driven by him. He gets changed to him. The last one, was he driving a car? Right, let's change it into passive. Was a car being driven by him? Right, I want you all to observe one thing here. There is no change of tense in passive. When you change a sentence from AV to PV or PV to AV, there is no change of tense. Tense remains the same. The only thing you all need to remember is in passive voice, we have to use 3V. And if you have continuous tenses in AV, we have to use being in passive voice. Right. You may be wondering, what about future continuous? Changing a sentence which is in future continuous from AV to PV, right? It's not possible and it's not there. That's how we are moving on to present perfect. Changing a tense, that is present perfect tense, from AV to PV. You have to be a bit more careful here, because when we are dealing with any perfect tenses, we are using 3V even in active voice, right? So you may get confused looking at the sentences whether the sentence is in AV or PV. Yes, it's very easy to identify. If you can note down the helping verbs that are used in passive voice in perfect tenses, the job gets easy, right? Let's look at the first one here. She has finished his work. Not her work, his work. When you look at a sentence like this, for a moment you may get confused whether the sentence is in AV or PV, right? Because finished is also in 3V here. But the helping verbs that get used in passive voice for perfect tenses are different, right? Let's look at the first one here. She has finished his work. The subject is she and the object is his work. Okay, his work has been finished by her. I want you all to make note of the words here, the helping verbs here. I mean, has been and have been. They get used in passive voice, not in active voice. That's it. If you can note down these two, it would be very easy for you to underline or to understand whether the sentence is in AV or PV. Has been is used with singular and have been is used with plural. Right, let's look at the next one. She has not finished her work. Again, the subject is active here. She's doing something. That's how it is in active voice. Now let's go for interchange. That's how her work takes the position of subject in passive voice. Her work has not been finished by her, or his work has not been finished by her. Let's look at the last one. Has she finished her work? Has will remain as has. Has her work been finished by her, or has his work been finished by her? I just want you all to understand only two things here. As I mentioned earlier, in passive voice, we have to always use 3V. And how do you differentiate between active voice and passive voice when you are using a perfect tense? Just remember these two words, has been and have been, they are used in passive voice when you're dealing with perfect tenses, right? Has for singular and have for plural. Now let's look at changing past perfect tense from active voice to passive voice. And the first thing you all need to remember here is there is only one change, right? From present perfect to past perfect, that is has been and have been get replaced with had been because we are dealing with past here, right? And 3V remains the same here in passive voice. Let's look at the examples here. They had completed the assignment. The sentence is an active voice because the subject is active here and the subject is they. And the object is the assignment, right? Now let's change it into passive. The object, the assignment, gets changed to the position of subject here. That's how the assignment had been completed by they becomes them. Let's look at the second sentence. They had not completed the assignment. Again, the assignment gets changed to the subject position in passive voice. The assignment had not been completed. I'm sorry, it has to be completed here instead of complete, completed by them. Let's look at the last sentence. Had they completed the assignment, had will retain its position even in passive voice. Had the assignment been completed by them. They gets changed to them because now they is moving to the object's position, right? Just a word of caution. It's very easy to identify whether the sentence is in AV or PV only if you remember what helping verbs are used in passive voice. When you're dealing with perfect tenses, in present perfect we use has been or have been plus 3V, and in past perfect we use had been plus 3V, right? Now you need to have an idea about intransitive verbs. You may wonder how come suddenly they have popped in, because there is some connection with passive voice here, right? Now I want you all to read the sentences here. The boy kicks the football. The boy laughs loudly. He ran a long distance, right? In the first sentence, you all can notice that there is an object in the sentence, right? Yeah. What about the second sentence? The boy laughs loudly. Loudly is not the object there. That explains how the boy is laughing, right? Now when we look at the third sentence, he ran a long distance. Long distance is not the object here. Long distance doesn't receive any action here, right? The action stops there. So sentence 2 and sentence 3, both these sentences do not have objects there. Such kind of sentences cannot be changed into passive, right? Okay. In the first sentence, the action denoted by the verb kicks passes over from the doer or the performer or the subject to the object football, right? In second and third sentences, the actions do not pass over to the objects because there are no objects, right? Therefore, the verbs in second and third sentences are called intransitive verbs. Just remember one thing. In is always for not, right? Intransitive means not passing over, right? When we have intransitive verbs in sentences, the actions do not pass over to the object. So an intransitive verb denotes an action which does not pass over to an object, or an intransitive verb expresses a state or a being, like the child sleeps. This is a state, right? In the same way, there is a flaw in the diamond. Here, actions cannot be passed over to an object. That's how these are called intransitive. The word itself denotes cannot be passed over. So these kind of sentences, that is the sentences with intransitive verbs, cannot be changed into passive voice. Right. Now, again, you may be wondering what is this imperative sentence? Yes. Sentences that express command or request or advice, they are called imperative sentences. Now let's look at some of the examples here. Open the door. This is like a command or an order. Next sentence, turn off the television. Again, this also falls into the imperative sentence category because this is also like a command. Learn your lesson is also an imperative sentence because the sentence again expresses a command, right? Yeah. Now, even these imperative sentences can be changed from active voice to passive voice by making some subtle changes. When I say subtle changes, one is let has to be used in passive voice, and the helping verb that we have to use in passive voice for imperative sentences is be. As I mentioned earlier, 3V will always be used in passive voice. Right. When I say open the door, the sentence is in present, not in past nor in future. Usually all the imperative sentences are in simple present. That's how we have to make use of the helping verb be in passive voice. Now look at the first one, open the door. A sentence like this in active voice gets changed to let the door be opened. The 3V form of open is open. Let's look at the next sentence, complete the work. The object here is the work. It gets shifted to the subject's place. Sorry, not the subject's place. Let the work be completed. I'm sorry. It should be let the work be completed, not let the worked be completed. Make a correction there. Turn off the television. Let the television be turned off. When I say turned off, I'm using 3V here. There is an error in the spelling here. It has to be not tuned off. It has to be turned off. Have fun, because learning is the discovery that something is possible. See you all in the next session. Bye.